All right, everybody, get ready for a deep dive. Today we're going behind the scenes of software specifically. How do we make sure those apps and websites we use every day actually work?
Yeah, I mean, most of us, we just see the finished product, right? It just works, or we hope it does.
Exactly. But behind all that is this whole world of software testing, and a big part of that is something called test cases.
Think of it like a recipe, but for software.
Okay, I'm intrigued. So to break this all down, we're using this awesome article by Thomas Hamilton. It's called How to Write Test Cases with Examples.
It's a great guide because test cases, they're kind of the unsung heroes of software development.
So what is a test case in plain English?
It's a step-by-step plan for checking if a piece of software does what it's supposed to. And it's not just about finding bugs.
It's more than that.
Yeah, it's about making sure the software works exactly as intended, like under all conditions.
So it's like if you were building a bridge, you wouldn't just hope it stands upright. You'd have engineers with all these tests to make sure it's safe.
Perfect analogy.
Huh.
So let's say we're testing a login feature. A test case might be, can a user log in with the correct email and password? Simple, but there's a structure to it.
Okay, walk me through that. What are the pieces of this test case recipe?
First, you got to give it a name, like login test with valid credentials.
Yeah.
Keep it clear so anyone knows what you're testing.
Makes sense. What's next?
Then you lay out the steps really specifically, like go to the login page, enter the correct email address, enter the correct password, then click the login button, each tiny action.
Oh, so you're not just checking the end result, you're making sure each step along the way is working right.
Exactly. And then comes the expected result, what should happen if everything's working right.
So in this case, it would be like the user is successfully logged in and taken to their profile page.
You got it. That's your benchmark. And during the actual test, you compare what happens to what you expected.
So if they match, boom, success. If not, well, then the fun begins, figuring out WHY.
Exactly. And that's where good test cases really shine.
Yeah.
They help you pinpoint exactly where the problem is.
But honestly, testing everything seems, I don't know, impossible. Software is so complex.
It is impossible to test every single possibility. So you prioritize. You focus on what's most critical, what absolutely has to work for the software to function.
So the core features, the heart of the application.
Right. And you got to think like a user, not just a developer. What would a user do? What mistakes might they make?
So you're not just following the happy path, the ideal scenario. You're trying to anticipate all the weird ways people might use the software.
Exactly. Experienced testers, they have this like sixth sense for where things could go wrong. They call it error guessing.
Error guessing. That sounds like my superpower when it comes to using technology. Huh.
That's right.
What other tricks do testers have up their sleeves?
Oh, tons. Like boundary value analysis. That's testing the edges of what's allowed. Like
Yeah.
what happens if you enter the smallest or largest possible number in a field?
So you're basically trying to break it, but in a controlled way.
Yeah, you're pushing the limits to see how the software handles it.
That's smart. What else?
Then there's equivalence partitioning, which is like grouping similar inputs together so you don't have to test every single thing. It's all about being efficient.
Work smarter, not harder. Right.
Exactly. But even with all these techniques, testing can get really complex, especially on big projects. That's where test management tools come in.
Ooh, yes. The article mentioned tools like Quality Center and JRA. What are those all about?
Imagine, like, you're building a skyscraper. You wouldn't just start stacking bricks without a plan, right? You need blueprints.
Okay, I see where you're going with this.
Test management tools? They're like those blueprints, but for quality assurance. They help you plan, organize, track everything about your testing. Keeps it from becoming chaos.
So it's like a central hub where all the information about the tests lives.
Exactly. And with all these tools out there, choosing the right one depends on what your project needs. It's like picking the right tool for a job.
You wouldn't use a hammer to screw in a light bulb.
Right. And just like any tool, there's a learning curve. But the payoff can be huge in terms of efficiency and quality.
Okay, I'm definitely seeing how crucial this all is. But before we get too deep into the world of these tools, I think we need to take a little breather.
Sounds good to me.
And we're back. Still exploring this whole software testing thing, and last we left off, we were getting into those test management tools. You were comparing them to blueprints for a skyscraper.
Yeah, they really help prevent things from, falling apart, especially on bigger projects. It's like, imagine building a house.
Yeah.
You wouldn't just start nailing boards together randomly.
You gotta have a plan.
Exactly. And with software, it's the same. You have to make sure all the pieces fit together, that the foundation is solid.
Okay, so these tools help us do that, but there are so many out there. Like the article mentioned Quality Center, JIRA. How do teams even choose which one to use?
Well, it depends, right? Different tools have different strengths,
Yeah.
different features. You got to pick the one that fits your project best.
So it's like, I don't know, like choosing a car. You wouldn't buy a sports car if you need to haul a bunch of stuff around.
Right. You need to think about what you're going to use it for. Some tools are better for bigger teams, some are more agile, some are better for automation.
Oh, yeah, we were going to get to that. Automation. What's the deal with that?
Automation's like, well, imagine you had a robot assistant that could do all the boring, repetitive parts of testing for you.
Sounds pretty awesome to me. So how does that actually work?
You use these special tools and frameworks that let you write scripts. It's like giving the computer instructions. So you could tell it to, like, log into a website, fill out a form, submit it, and then check if it went through correctly.
So instead of a human having to do all those steps manually every single time?
Exactly. The script does it automatically. Super helpful for, like, regression testing, where you got to make sure that new changes to the code didn't break anything that was working before.
Makes sense. So automation saves time, reduces errors. Is it like the magic solution to everything?
Well, not exactly. It's got to be used strategically. You don't want to try to automate everything.
Why not?
Some things just need that human touch, like complex scenarios or things that require judgment or intuition. Automation's great for the repetitive stuff, but it can't replace a skilled tester completely.
So it's all about finding that balance, right?
Yup. Knowing when to automate, when to use human expertise. And even with automation, you still need someone to design those scripts, make sure they're working correctly, and interpret the results.
Okay, makes sense.
Uh,
Now, going back to the article, the author Thomas Hamilton, he talks a lot about writing good test cases. What are some of the key things to keep in mind?
Well, like with anything, clarity is key, right? You got to make sure your test cases are easy to understand, even for someone who's not super familiar with the project.
So no crazy technical jargon.
Exactly. Plain language, step-by-step instructions that anyone can follow.
And each step needs to be like super specific, right? You can't just say, test the login. You have to break it down.
Right. No room for ambiguity. And you got to think about those what-if scenarios. Not just the happy path, but what if someone enters the wrong password? What if they try to use a username that doesn't exist?
Ah, so that's like deliberately trying to break the system.
Exactly. It's called negative testing. You want to see how the software handles errors, how robust it is?
Smart. What else?
Well, you got to think like a user, too. What might be confusing or frustrating for them? Are there any accessibility issues? You want to catch those things early on.
So it's about more than just technical correctness. It's about the whole user experience.
Right. And that often means collaborating with designers, UX folks, not just developers.
So it's a team effort. Okay, so we've talked about writing good test cases, managing them, automating them, but there are different kinds of tests too, right? Like different levels.
Yeah, it's kind of like a pyramid. At the bottom, you've got unit testing that's testing individual pieces of code in isolation, like making sure each brick is strong before you build the wall.
Got it. Then what?
Then you move up to integration testing, where you see how those different pieces of code work together, like do the bricks fit together properly?
Makes sense. And then,
Then there's system testing, where you test the whole system as a whole. Is the entire wall sturdy? And finally, at the top of the pyramid, you've got acceptance testing. That's where you make sure the software actually meets the needs of the users, like, is the wall the right height?
okay, so it's like a step-by-step process getting more and more complex as you go up the pyramid. But even with all these levels, with all these amazing tools we've been talking about, ultimately, it's still humans who are doing the testing, right?
Of course. Tools are great. They help us be more efficient. But they can't replace human judgment, human intuition. You still need skilled testers to plan the strategy, interpret the results, make sure everything's on track.
So it's a combination of the human and the technical. That's cool. Okay, so we've talked about it a lot today. I feel like I have a much better grasp of this whole software testing world now.
Me too. It's a fascinating field, always evolving.
But before we wrap things up, I'm curious, what do you see for the future of software testing? Any cool trends or innovations on the horizon?
Oh, definitely. One of the big things is AI, artificial intelligence.
Whoa, AI. That's getting into like sci-fi territory.
All right. But it's already happening. People are using AI to automate test case creation, to find bugs, even to predict how software is going to behave.
So it's like having a super smart testing assistant constantly learning and getting better.
Exactly. It's pretty amazing. But of course, with any new technology, there are ethical considerations.
Right, like we got to make sure we're using AI responsibly. It's a tool and we have to be careful how we use it.
Absolutely. Another trend I'm seeing is a bigger emphasis on test-driven development. That's where you actually write the tests before you write the code.
Wait, so you're testing something that doesn't even exist yet?
It sounds weird, but it actually makes a lot of sense. It forces developers to think about how the software should work from the very beginning,
Yeah.
which can lead to better design and fewer bugs.
So it's like building quality in from the ground up.
Exactly. And it encourages better collaboration between developers and testers.
I can see how that would be helpful. It's like everyone's working together from the start instead of testers just coming in at the end to find all the problems.
Right. It's a more holistic approach.
Well, this has been fascinating. I feel like we've just scratched the surface of this whole world, but it's given me a lot to think about,
It's a constantly evolving field, so there's always more to learn.
for sure. But before we get too carried away, I think it's time to wrap things up for this part of our deep dive. And we are back for the final part of our deep dive into the world of software testing.
You know, it's kind of wild how much we depend on software now, right? Like for everything.
It really is. From our phones to our cars, it's everywhere. And as software gets more complex, testing has to keep up.
Totally. The stakes are getting higher, it seems like. More potential for things to go wrong.
Yeah, and the consequences can be pretty big too. If there's a bug in a banking app, that's people's money at stake. No kidding. So it's more important than ever to get this right. But honestly, I never realized how much skill and thought goes into testing. It's not just clicking buttons randomly, is it?
Oh, not at all. It takes real expertise. You need that technical knowledge, of course,
Yeah.
but also the ability to think critically, be creative, even a little bit of detective work.
That's so cool. So for someone listening who's like, "Hey, this sounds interesting. Maybe I want to get into testing." What would you say are the must-have skills?
Well, a solid understanding of how software works is a must. You got to know the basics of coding, design, all that.
Okay, so some tech skills, makes sense. What else?
You got to be a good problem solver. Analytical skills are huge. Being able to break down complex issues, spot patterns, think logically.
So being detail-oriented is important.
Oh, yeah, for sure. But you also got to be able to communicate your findings clearly to others. It's a team effort, so writing and speaking skills are important too.
Makes sense. You can't just be a lone wolf coder in the basement, I guess.
Nope. And being curious is big too. Always learning, always staying up to date on the latest tech. This field changes so fast.
So always a new challenge. Sounds exciting, actually, but also kind of intimidating.
Well, it's not for everyone, that's for sure. But if you're up for the challenge, it can be incredibly rewarding.
I'm definitely getting that sense. Okay, so we've covered a ton about the present of software testing, but what about the future? What's next, in your opinion?
Well, AI, artificial intelligence, is already making waves. People are using it to help automate testing, find bugs faster, even predict problems before they happen.
Whoa, that's wild. AI is going to take over our jobs?
Not quite. It's more like AI is becoming a powerful tool to help us do our jobs even better. But we got to use it responsibly, right? Think about the ethical implications.
Right, it's not just about the tech itself, it's how we use it. What else is on the horizon?
Another trend I'm seeing is test-driven development becoming even more popular.
We talked about that before, right? Writing the tests before the code still sounds kind of backwards to me.
I know, it takes some getting used to. But it really does help improve quality, and it forces everyone to be on the same page from the start.
More collaboration, less surprises later on.
Exactly.
Well, this has been an incredible journey. Honestly, I had no idea how much went into making sure the software we use every day actually works.
It's a hidden world, but a crucial one.
For sure. So to everyone listening, whether you're a tech pro or just curious about how things work, hopefully this deep dive has given you a new appreciation for the world of software testing.
It's a fascinating field, and there's always more to explore.
Absolutely. So keep learning, keep asking questions, and until next time, keep those brains buzzing.